Welcome, Divine Hearts, and thank you so much for joining us. This week, we have a very special guest joining us. He's Steve Nobel, and many of you, I'm sure, are well aware of his work over the years and immense transmissions and meditations and videos. Steve is many things. He is a starseed, a wayshower, an energy worker, a light keeper, an author, and he truly is here in divine service, and all of his light body work, his resources that are available on his website, The Soul Matrix, is a testament to the level of dedication and commitment and compassion that he holds for humanity. He has truly been here and served other starseeds through his work and all of us who are on this ascension journey. He's also an author and has written 6 books in all, the most recent being Starseeds and The Spiritual Entrepreneur, which we hope to be able to speak about a bit later. And he has also created his own healing modality called the Soul Matrix, after many years of experiencing and navigating different types of energy work and coming to create something that is innately his, called the Soul Matrix system and healing. And so I look forward to speaking about this a bit later too. So thank you so much, Steve, for being here and being such a generous heart, sharing your space and time with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh,
thanks for inviting me.
It's a great joy. It's a great joy. So let's start with the Starseed title, if you will, this word, and look at when this came to be something that activated you, or you became interested in, or felt an alignment to. And also then how that became a seed for something that you've worked around to share and assist other starseeds since then too.
Yeah, well, in my family, it was pretty normal, you could say, and non-spiritual, working class family. And my escape was into superhero comics and sci-fi. Sorry, I've just suddenly got.
It's okay.
And so I would read these kind of sci-fi futuristic and look at it. Really, the futuristic was calling me, all these futuristic ideas and possibilities, you know, of technology. And this was the early days. And then there was Doctor Who that came along, and Star Trek came along. And now we've got Star Wars. We've got all this wonderful futuristic stuff. So I started waking up in the early 90s, and I joined an organization called Alternatives in London as a volunteer. And I became a director in 2000. There was one channel that I was interested in called, it was the Ra material. I don't know if you come across that.
Yeah, I've been doing it.
And then the Ra material, he talks about wanderer souls, starseeds. And I kind of read this in the late 90s, I think, or maybe mid 90s. And it was like, it's an interesting idea. I thought, yeah, possibly. And there's lots of kind of books like that. And then I started hearing about Ascension. I thought, well, it's an interesting idea, possibly. And I started hearing about 2012, and I thought, well, that's an interesting idea. I don't know. I was more interested in the practical sides of spirituality, kind of intuition, awakening, flow, and these things were interesting me. Starseeds was a kind of, you know, vague ascension. I don't know. 2012, I wasn't sure about. And then leading up to 2012, I hit something. It was like a soul calling. I had one earlier in the 90s, which kind of transformed my life. This was another one, but this was a different one. It led me into a dark night of the soul because I was kind of resisting it. It was pulling me away from the life I was living. I was a director of a spiritual organization. My life was good, but the soul was going, no, this way. And I'm like, no, you brought me here and I'm happy here. I've got all my friends here and there's a soul family here. Why do you want me to move? And for the first time, I think in my whole spiritual experience, I said no. You know, I'd always said yes. It's always a good idea to say yes. And the first time I said no. And that led to a kind of tension building inside of me. And eventually it exploded in me. I went into this dark night of the soul. I resigned from alternatives. My relationship ended of 12 years. And then I was like, well, what am I doing? And I went in this kind of free falling thing. And it was only afterwards when I started coming out of the dark night of the soul that I looked back and I thought, Starseeds, Ascension, 2012. Oh, maybe there is something more to it. I didn't realize. And the dots started somehow connecting in my consciousness. And actually, when I woke up one morning after the dark night of the soul was receding, it was a really difficult time, very difficult. All my intuition, connection to source went. I was like freewheeling, like, what am I doing here? But I woke up one morning and a voice said to me, it wasn't my mind, it was some other voice. You know, we got our own little voices going on. But this was another voice that says, okay, welcome back. Time to teach about Starseeds and Ascension. And I was like, oh, okay. So I sat with it for 2 weeks. And I thought, well, you know what? I have to just say yes to it, even though I'm a bit scared about all of that. And I don't know if I know about it enough. So I said yes. And then people started flocking to workshops and things. And I'm like, eek. And I was on a sharp learning curve, like, Starseeds, who are these beings? You know, where are we from? Who are these people connecting with us? And so I went on a really rapid 2-year learning curve. I think where I am now, I have a better handle on the whole thing. But back then it was like, okay, you're asking me to teach something I'm not sure I really know about. But I did it. And they kind of downloaded stuff and the transmission started. You know, I'm like, what is this? And it was like, just do it. The first one was the Earth Star Goddess while I was in Greece. And I'm like, I was kind of, again, resisting it. And they just said, because it's a goddess energy. Why am I doing a transmission for a goddess? I'm not a woman. And I did argue a little bit with them. And then I got to just do it. And I was like, oh, okay, just do it. And I don't argue anymore. I'm like, okay, we just do it. So, so that was my introduction to the whole thing of Starseeds. It was really, I heard about it. I doubted it. And then I went through this dark night of the soul. And on the other side of it, I started connecting dots going, maybe there is something about this. And then I got the voice going, right, now you're going to teach about it. And that was my journey, like, oh, okay. No, welcome back. You know, no softly, softly. Hey, you had a hard time. Come, welcome back. It was all pretty right. Now get on with it. Like, oh, all right. So, so I have been getting on with it.
Yes, you have. And you've got an immense library of things to share with people. And this is one of the many things that people love about you, because you go through your own experiences, and then you share the wisdom and the knowledge, having gone through that experience. So in a sense, you are this really safe pair of hands now for Starseeds who are possibly awakening or in their journey and looking for somebody who's been there, done that, in a sense, and got the badge for whatever experiences that needed for you to go through. Because we all face similar experiences in some way. It's part of our growth. How would you look at Starseeds today? What is your understanding of that today?
Well, I think because I was born in the late 50s, so I was born in dense energy, and coming out of that and going through a lot of dense energies and coming out of it into a lighter energy, I kind of understand that a lot of people, a lot of Starseeds are born in dense energies, dense families, go to dense jobs, you know, dense education systems. And having gone through that, I think if I'd have been born with enlightened parents and been sent to a Steiner school or something, I would be like, well, I don't really know about that density. I don't know how to help you out of it. I just know it's a bit like someone who's got a lot of money and someone says, well, how do I become abundant? And you say, well, just get a trust fund. It's like, well, that doesn't really help. So I think I had to go through all of the challenges, and I'm still going through them, you know, challenges of sensitivity, which Starseeds had, challenges of energetic boundaries, challenges of psychic interference, psychic attack, challenges of the intuition playing up, you know, how do I know this is intuition or fear speaking? All of these various things going through resistance, the soul saying, we want you to go there, and my ego going, no. So I've gone through that journey. And so when people come to me and they have issues with energetic boundaries or psychic attack or resistance or ego issues, I've kind of have an idea about how to help them. And also if I face something, or if a client is facing something and I get an instant twang, oh, this something has to be put out because this is something that's going to affect a lot of people. For example, I had someone who says, I've got an anger issue, how do I deal with it? And I realized on my channel, there was nothing dealing with anger. And I had to go in meditation and ask, well, we have to address this. And I got a yes, and it was downloaded and I just put it out. So the most recent one is called Gold Citrine Crystal Solar Shield. And that one came about because of a certain level of psychic interference. And I wanted to give clients and people a tool where if someone is attacking, they have a way of just shielding themselves. It allows in higher levels of joy, love, the higher frequencies, but blocks out the lower. That's the intention. I've been using it myself for a while, and it works quite effectively. So yeah, and then I had a client recently, they were having a similar problem, so I created it for them. And then it's up on the platform for everyone. So I tested out, does it work? If it works, I put it out. Because when I was at Alternatives, basically Alternatives was an organization putting on spiritual authors. I've listened to thousands of people speak. Literally over 20 years, I've heard maybe 2,000 or 3,000 people speak with different models, different ideas. And I always had the idea that you try it out. If it works, use it. If it doesn't work, it's an interesting idea and put it to one side. And I think really, I recommend people to have a kind of pragmatic approach to, does it work? And constantly trying to improve or update things where that works, but not 100%. So we have to do something else to make it work, because reality is a way we test out things. This is the beauty of being in the body, that we can, the reality is a feedback system, is your thinking, feeling, intentions, dreams, desires all working for you, or are they creating mayhem? Or are they creating a mixture of stuff, And so we have reality, but most people in the 3D world, which is the kind of unawakened world, the muggle world, if you like, don't realize their thoughts or feelings have any impact on the world around them. They think the world is impacting them, and it's their boss or their wife or their mother-in-law that's got the power, or whatever it is. But actually, that's the reversal, isn't it? That we realize it's not Boris Johnson or Joe Biden that has the real power. They don't really have the power. Yeah, they can do certain things, but the real power comes from within. And I think this spiritual awakening, this spiritual revolution on the planet is going to be from the grassroots up. It's a grassroots revolution upwards. And eventually the leadership's reflecting a kind of 3D mindset, really, still. But as this higher consciousness ripples out across the world, the leadership has to start reflecting it. It has to. It's not doing it very well at the moment. It's kind of a mixture, In America, you've got Trump and Biden. That's a real mixed bag, isn't it? Like, who do you vote for there? And I mean, I could say a lot more about that, but I think the leadership of it is going to catch up eventually. It's not there yet. Well, I don't really trust many of our global leaders, to be honest. I think they're all got a 3D agenda, and some of them are, I think, very compromised by dark forces, you could say. But there we are.
I had a really unexpected but lovely conversation with somebody when I was down at the beach the other day. And I'd been meditating quietly, and then he came up and he started to talk, and he wanted to share, he wanted to know what I was doing. And then it turns out he was very much into meditation. And so he began to speak about peace, and how he was finding through his own process in his meditation how much he wasn't in peace yet, and how everything came up for him to see in his meditation, all the anger, these things, these emotions that we hold inside. And he said something that I was moved by, because we are in these communities, we hear people speak. It's become a normal way of speak for us to hear these terminologies. But to hear him say, he just said randomly, because it is each our own responsibility to clear our own stuff.
Yeah.
And I just loved that. I loved that there is this awareness, and it's a growing awareness that this inner work, and so much of your work is part of this assisting, supporting with the clearing, this taking people within themselves to start to look deeply at what we are holding inside, and the immensity of that and the power of that too. And as we are releasing, how exciting it's going to be to see those changes outside of us too in our realities. So there's many things there that lead up to you with the soul matrix healing system, and also recently you created a clearing that was all about the Atlantean and Egyptian timeline too. And so to look at those things and the things that we are holding inside that we have and had no idea the immensity of it, in a sense, that we were holding stuff in place without end, because we were unconscious. But you know, we were holding stuff in place. We were holding that matrix, that 3D matrix in place without any comprehension. So as we are evolving now together, and you supporting all of this togetherness so beautifully through your work, it is, we are inevitably in that process of seeing changes occur. Yeah,
I think there's three main areas which I focus on. I think everyone, these three areas to some degree, therapists or healers will focus on, or starseeds are focusing on themselves. And the first one is our present life conditioning, the stories we've got from our family, all of the traumas and the stuff in our families that we are still, you know, often clearing. And these are ego issues, really. We absorb parents' energy, attitudes, and that becomes part of our own ego. Even if we don't like it, we fight against it. I don't like that, but even when we're fighting against something, we're kind of dancing with it. The other aspect is ancestral. And this is one that most coaches and counselors don't really touch upon, therapy doesn't touch upon. Ancestral healing, that we're carrying energies from our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. And that has to be dealt with. And that only activates when we start really waking up spiritually for most people. Otherwise, they're unconscious of it. But when there's a blessing of the spiritual awakening in that reality starts shifting, start manifesting, things get easier. But also this stuff comes up, which is like family and ancestral stuff. So my grandparents fought in World War I. Both of them were in the army in World War I, British Army in France. And I've been, you know, spent hours dealing with that because I think I've been carrying it and the energy of war, British Empire and war, you know, it's in my bloodline. So I've been clearing that, and colonization, empire, all of that kind of stuff.
Wow.
The other one is, sorry.
Can I interrupt you just there?
Yeah.
I don't want to disturb the flow because that's so interesting. Because for me, being Welsh, it's the other side of the coin, in a sense, that sense of enslavement by the empire, and anger, ancestral anger of being powerless. Yeah, all those things. And so it's so interesting. But you carry on.
Yeah, well, in Wales you've had like incursions from you have Roman, and then you've had the kind of Saxon, Danish incursions, and you've had Norman, and all of these kind of things. And Wales has suffered, of course. And then when under the English kings, you've had incursions in Wales. It's all these kind of wars. Yeah. And Scotland the same, and Ireland the same. And so as England kind of embraced Ireland, Scotland, Wales, then you became part of the empire, and you were kind of recruited into the army and into all that. You became part of the machine. And when I look at it, it is a kind of machine. Even though people look on the British Empire as kind of, well, it was better than many empires, but still it was an empire, and it was kind of hierarchical class system, all of that. Britain is very class. It still is quite a class system, really. Anyway, so the other thread is, so the ancestral thread. So it depends where you are. So I've had clients, for example, Afro-American clients in America, they will have slavery in their bloodlines, difficult. You have people coming from Caribbean or South America or Africa, they could have shamanic black magic in their bloodline. You can have all kinds of stuff. It does depend where you're coming from, the bloodline. But the further back you go, of course, all of these, it gets a bit blurry, and many bloodlines, certainly in the West, have been through religious stuff, you know, that's another load of stuff that comes out through bloodlines, you know, the Catholic Church and the Christian Church, and all these, certainly in Europe, the wars between the Catholics and the Protestants, that endless, and then the burning of the witches and the whole, all of that religious nonsense that went on. And then you have other lifetime issues that come up. So you've got these three, so it's got this stuff that comes up from this life, from ancestors, and from other lifetimes. And we have to find a way of knowing, well, what's coming up and where is it coming from and what is it and what do I do with it? And that's part of the journey, really. And I think anyone on the path needs to find a method of dealing with stuff, whatever that method is. I have my own method, which is like clearing the Akashic records and the soul matrix healing stuff, which I do on myself and on clients. But whatever it is, whether it's a kind of Eckhart Tolle way of dealing with it, or whether it's the kind of Byron Katie way of dealing with the work, you know, the great thing now is we've got so many models of dealing with stuff. So what I've been interested in is what's the most effective models, taking what's most effective and bringing it together and see how it comes together as effective. That's what I've been doing. And I'm still on that journey of learning. You know, this model has been building this last several years, but there's still bits where I'm like, I've never seen this before. That's interesting. What do we do with this? You know, because we live in a complex universe, energy universe, it's complex. It's not simple. There are no simple, we can make it, yes, there can be, the best spiritual teachers give simple answers, of course, but the universe is quite complex, really. So we have to find ways of dealing with stuff. Anything that has the energy of love within it, compassion within it's good. You know, I think Christianity is great because that core message of love is there, which is brilliant. And Buddhism, it has got that compassionate energy. And Buddhism is brilliant for self-awareness, going in, being aware of all the various things. So Buddhism is one of the best practices probably of all the religions for self-awareness, you know. But I think what Buddhism, like all the religions, miss something. There's golden threads there, but it's not like it's the one perfect way. You need, in this current time we're in, there's so many ideas, so many teachers out there. We have to go find what works for us and not just stick to one path because I have to be a Buddhist or I have to be I lived in a community of Buddhists for 5 years and I found there was just as much stuff in that house as, you know, as anywhere else, really. They were still dealing with stuff. It wasn't a perfect path. So yeah, finding these three threads, the Atlantean Egyptian timeline, this is one I'm interested in because I think I've traveled that timeline. So Atlantis is this fabled mythological land which existed, for me, probably in the Atlantic Ocean around there, connected to the North Americas and extending perhaps as far as the Azores. There's all kinds of historical pointers to it. You know, in ancient Greece, they talked about Egypt, and Greece, they talk about Atlantis. There's lots of archaeological stuff. The building of the pyramids is very strange because Egypt was meant to be an Atlantean colony. So the interesting thing about Egypt, and a lot of it's really, some archaeologists are talking about this. There's one interesting guy called Graham Hancock talks about this. He says that Egypt was this kind of tribal, Neolithic, primitive society. And suddenly out of nowhere arises a whole language of hieroglyphics, a whole mythology of gods and goddesses, pyramid building, which is very advanced. I don't even know if they could build the pyramids today with the technology we have. And so from nowhere arose this civilization. And what he suggests is, and what I believe is true, is that a more advanced civilization seeded it. And I think it wasn't just Egypt. I think, for example, in Britain, the Druids were probably seeded from Atlantean. You know, I think India and Tibet had seeds of Atlantis. I think they spread it around the world. And but on that, what I've felt in myself and with clients is that there's all these wonderful gifts in Atlantis and in Egypt, but there's the dark side to it. There's this light magic, light, bright, and dark. People like, do you know Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet?
Yes.
Yeah, Edgar Cayce talked about the law of one and the sons of Belial. The sons of Belial were ones following materialistic, selfish, self-centered service to self. And the law of one was serving the divine service to others. And because these materialistic group in Atlantis started gathering wealth, gathering knowledge, working with dark science, they, in a way, it's a reflection of what's happening today. A dark elite working through science, working through money, working through manipulation, and they eventually destroyed the organization, the civilization. And that civilization then sprang up in other places like Egypt. And then in Egypt, again, those sons of Belial followed them there, and there was this light, dark tussle. You just got to read the mythology of Egypt. It's all light and dark, you know, the light and dark stuff. You know, Set, the dark god, fighting with Horus, the god of light, and all of these kind of myths. And the interesting thing about Egypt is, for example, the pyramid building got worse. The further advanced they got in time, the worse their building got, which is kind of interesting. You normally get better, but apparently the better pyramids were the earlier ones, and they got worse in time, which shows that they were losing touch with that earlier civilization, that earlier knowledge. And so that I did a whole, and it was actually one of the most strongest webinars I've ever done, because it was so strong, the clearing on it. And I had people email me going, oh my gosh, it's still clearing out. I'll do it again next year. I do them once or twice a year, those kind of webinars, so that'll be repeated. So that is quite a strong one, really, Atlantean. The other one that's coming up for some people is the Lemurian timeline. A lot of people have connections with Lemuria, maybe had lifetimes there. Lemuria was a 5D civilization. It was like the original humanity, Garden of Eden, you could say, perhaps. And the beings there were not physical in the same way. They had a physical body, but it wasn't quite as dense as this. It was more crystalline. This is more carbon-based where we are now. And there was a choice to descend in vibration. It was a collective decision. Let's go and experience more density. Who thought that idea up? I don't know. I don't think I agreed with it. I'm not sure I like the idea very much. Anyway, the energy of the goddess, which was present in Lemuria, started to leave the planet. So gradually, the planet fell into patriarchy. And Atlantis was also had patriarchal overtones to it. And then after Atlantis went, and with the fall of Atlantis, the final destruction of Atlantis, the Earth fell in vibration, fell through the dimensions. Earth became a 3D planet. So we've been living in 3D ever since the fall of Atlantis. Now at this point is the nexus point where we're starting to rise in vibration again. And as we rise in vibration, we're starting to remember, oh, we had lifetimes here and there, some of them difficult, some of them lovely. And all of this stuff is opening. The Akashic records are opening again. Sacred sites, which were closed down before the final destruction of Atlantis, you know, light forces realized what was going on and closed them down. You know, places like Stonehenge closed, other places around the world closed. And then we went through the collective dark night of the soul, where people, basically, most of us had been switched off. We were only active from the solar plexus down. The lower 3 chakras are active. All of our higher chakras are not working. And so we went into darkness, into war. Now these chakras are opening up again. And the DNA also is reforming from 2 strands to many strands. You know, we're more than 2-stranded beings. And so as this happens, we're remembering Atlantis, remembering these lifetimes, remembering Lemuria, and the goddess is returning again, which is great. And that's why you've had the rise in the 60s of feminism. You have all these women now. If you look at any spiritual group, it's like 90% women. It's the goddess energy that's calling them, and men that feel it and are open to it. I'm very, as you can see in my channel, all goddess, Isis, and Sekhmet. So I'm very open to that, and I felt the calling of it, that energy is coming back, not to dominate the planet. We're not going back into matriarchy, but we're going into a union for the first time, I think, in living or the memory of the planet. I don't know. I don't even know if it's maybe in Lemuria it happened when there was this union. But beyond that, it's not happened since Lemuria. It's coming back to that union, where the union happens within us, and then in the planet, we're starting to see the feminine being more honored in the world. in the workplace, in the legal system. So it starts trickling through 3D. The feminine is coming back, the goddess is coming back. And that's good news, actually, I feel.
Oh, you shared that so beautifully. For me, I've always resonated with the feeling and the frequency of Lemuria.
Yeah.
It's always felt very close to my heart. It's this purity, and Atlantis, not so much. There was a resistance there with Atlantis. And so when you're talking about this merge, that's really important, because it is one of those many merges that I feel we are called to make as we continue. And that this Atlantean Lemurian merge that we come to, or certainly for me, to appreciate the experiences of Atlantis, and to see all of it as an experience, that we gained some wisdom from it, whatever that may be, and to merge it and then create something new in a way, a returning to purity, with that wisdom of what we have experienced, in a sense. So being really more conscious now in our choosing. And I do feel what you say about this divine feminine frequency returning, and not being seen as something that is weak, that there is a power in that, and not just a beautiful power, really, and that it works in beautiful cohesion with the action of the masculine too.
Yeah.
Because they're both coming in together, always these mergings with all of it.
Yeah. I think for a lot of starseeds in patriarchy, there's a kind of revulsion initially with the masculine. It's like, I don't like that energy. It's dominated the planet. It's causing all this war, and there can be a rejection of it. So, I mean, even myself, I kind of rejected it for a while, going, I don't like this energy. I worked in banking for a while. It was very kind of patriarchal, and not very nice, I didn't find, in the city. And so let's go into the softer, the feminine. Let's just hang out there, and let's just meditate and go into nature. But eventually, for anyone doing that, there's a calling back to look back at the masculine, going, I can't disown you. I need to re-embrace you. And a lot of starseeds struggle in terms of success and money and abundance. And part of the issue for them is the rejection of the masculine. So it's difficult for some people because they feel the masculine has been harmful, but it's not that the masculine is harmful. It's just that the masculine is out of balance and has been just too extreme. The same would happen if the feminine was out of balance and extreme. You'd have dark feminine energies, which could be also very difficult. If anyone's had a dark feminine mother, like, hey, come, that's also very difficult. An angry, raging feminine is also not very nice. So it's really about embracing. We may reject one pole. For some people, they reject the feminine. They go. Some people distrust the feminine and go, I'm just going to be masculine. I'm just going to be, bullet point and boxy. And some people go there, and some people go, I'm going to reject the feminine. I'm going to reject the masculine. I'm going to go into the feminine, soft, flowing. I don't want to think too much. I just want to feel. But we need both. And in the union of both is a synergy that creates success and genius, really. It's that union. And for a lot of people, that's part of what they're here to do. They're here to reignite those two energies in themselves. So these two energies don't become like divorced parents, that they're there, but we ain't speaking to each other. And sometimes I can be a bit masculine, sometimes a bit feminine, but we're not going to be together. They need to be together in union. The sacred marriage is the internal one, where these parts are married and they start really supporting one another. And to do that, they have to get over any levels of distrust where, the feminine has abandoned me or betrayed me, or the masculine has attacked me. All these programs have to be cleared, and then we can come back to our pure essence, which is this union. And from that union, magic happens, really. Without that union happening, that's one union, which is very, very important. The other union is the union of heaven and earth, which is the spirit and matter. Because for a number of people, they're they've dived too deeply into materialism. They're too much my body, my haircut, my handbag. You know, it's all of this, which is too materialistic. And some people, they're too much into spirit. They're, oh, the body's not important. I don't have to worry about anything money. I'm just going to go into a mountain or into an ashram, meditate, and forget the world. These two poles have to be unified. The body is the temple of the spirit. It has to be honored and embraced as that. Money is an energy. It has to be embraced as that. All materialism has to be embraced, not in a way where we're obsessed with materialism, but we use it as just part of the journey. You know, money is just fuel for the journey, really. If you treat money that way, then you can have money. If you don't, if you treat it like an obsessive, if money equals your self-worth or something like that, then we start repelling it, you know, like, oh, well, maybe I'm not that worthy, so I can't have that much money, or, you know, all of this kind of nonsense that goes on. Money is just energy, like electricity. Nobody goes into a house and goes, am I worthy of this electric light bulb? No, nobody does that, because that'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it? But they do that with money. Am I worthy? So these two poles, the masculine and feminine, have to come together, and the heaven and earth come together. This is the kind of equilateral cross, which I think is the symbol of Christianity. But that cross, to me, represents these four poles coming together, which is the then we really can walk in the world in the present moment, feeling connected to our whole self, really, and life becomes very different that way. So if we can connect those two poles, so in all my meditations, it's all about heaven and earth, connecting to the crystalline grid of Gaia, connecting to the Christ grid of the great central sun, and it's all about the horizontal plane as well, which is the archangels holding the horizontal plane. Some of them are more masculine, some of them more feminine. So that's why every transmission is held that way, in this structure, you know, the vertical and the horizontal plane.
That's led really beautifully to coming to speak a little bit more about your book, The Spiritual Entrepreneur, and also you've mentioned there abundance and how everything. So I was really interested just to see now with higher sights that you're able to see maybe how Steve operates in frequency terms today with his offerings. As an entrepreneur, and how that works in energetic terms in comparison with how Steve worked years ago. So the difference, and also you've mentioned this flow with abundance and us coming to understand what that is, the energy of it. So just to speak a little bit more about that, the change.
My family were working class, really embedded in struggle. They were sort of the earth hard-working people, you know, work hard. And my father worked hard and died young. He died in his late 50s, and I think he got some industrial illness and it affected his lungs, and he died. And my mother died in her late 60s. Again, but young, really. I think both of them were products of the Industrial Revolution and went through it. And the industrial, you know, factories and that way of working doesn't care really about people's well-being, really. They just care about the end product, you know, drive that bus, print that newspaper, you know, all of that kind of thing. It's hard going through. And a lot of people are still working in that industrial mindset, which is the clock, click on, click off. And I grew up with that. My father was very much into time. You know, be home at 9 o'clock, you know, and it was like, and I remember once having a nightmare about coming home late, and it was just terrifying. I had this fear of lateness, you know. It's kind of military idea, you know. And so when I went to work in the city, and it was all about, you're at your desk at 9 o'clock, it's like Neo, get to your desk at 9, you know, whatever, and you do your job and you don't deviate. If you do deviate, you get sent to the manager, all of this kind of stuff, you know. And I went through, banks operate in that industrial mindset. People are like little cogs in a big machine, and all the cogs have to be nicely polished and work precisely. Otherwise you get told off and whatever. And so I grew up in that. I then left banking. I went into a more left-wing working environment, which was local government. But then when I left all that, I went to Alternatives, which was a spiritual organization. And it wasn't clock watching. It was about, really, the organization was about love. And I was like, well, people are appreciated here. We would go for tea together and talk together. And I'm like, wow, there was like a family feeling to it. And you don't get that in most workplaces.
No.
I started looking at money in a different way, at alternatives, because I started, and actually there was a guy there, he worked in the corporate world and he worked in alternatives. He had one foot in the corporate world and one in alternatives. And he said, in the corporate world, if you charge less than £1,000 a day offering some training, they will laugh at you. And I was like, this was back in the 90s. I'm like, £1,000 a day. And I started thinking, and he was saying to me, there are different mentalities and ways of thinking about money. And I think in alternatives, I started to learn there's ways of thinking about money that I wasn't aware of. And I started expanding my thinking about money. What I did, I was a volunteer on the bookstore and selling books. As I loved selling books, it's something I was good at. And the guy running the bookstore said to me, I want to give you £10 for all these books you've sold tonight. And I was like, what, you mean you're going to pay me for doing something I love? That was a new for me, because I was paid before for doing something I didn't like very much. And I think a lot of people don't mind being paid a lot of money for a job they dislike, or they have to do it. But to get paid a load of money for a job they like or love, can feel like a, so that was a real shift for me. I'm like, and I did have the thought of framing that £10. I didn't do it in the end. I wish I had done it, because that was a kind of point in my change in my thinking. And I thought, well, you can earn money doing something you love. And then I started eventually working in an organization. I became a director of the organization. I absolutely adored it. I loved it, because we could create anything. I realized one idea could create a whole stream of abundance. So we would sit around having tea, and I would get ideas. What about this? And what about that? And then we would forge something. So one idea was actually I was having tea with this guy, and he had an idea. And I said, that's a great idea. Are you going to run with it? He said, no, not really. So I said, I put this idea on. It ran for several years, made, I don't know how many thousands of pounds, really did well. And so in the current, here I am, self-employed. So going from employment to self-employment, entrepreneur is a big shift in, as an employee, you turn up, you follow the rules, you get paid. As an entrepreneur, you don't follow the rules. There are no rules. There is no clock. There is no one watching your clock. There is no one telling me you got to do this or that. I mean, my partner will say, when we do things together, have you done that? Or I'll say to her, have you done this? Because we're working together. But generally, there's nobody looking over my shoulder. There's nobody generating abundance but me. Now, for a lot of people, that's terrifying, because they're like, eek, I don't know how, I'm a bit scared about that. That sounds a bit difficult. But for me, because I had my training in alternatives, I sit often in tea. So I had an idea about 4 months ago. Why don't I put on a webinar, self-publish your book? Because there's a lot of people who want to self-publish and don't know how. So I started researching. I went to a conference in London on self-publishing run by Amazon and Kindle, and started gathering ideas. I've already self-published. This book is self-published as a Kindle and physical book. So I know how to do it. I've done other books as well, so I know how to do it. So we created a webinar on self-publish your book. Now that webinar, I'm sure will do well and could run for several years. So that one idea just is like another channel of abundance opens and, comes through. So I've got, I don't know, about 20 different webinars maybe on offer, and they're all different channels. So some do well, it's one time, some do less well. I did a webinar called Channel Your Book. And in lockdown, I had 260 people sign up for that webinar. That webinar made over 10,000. Can you imagine, in 2 hours? I mean, there was promo and everything. In 2 hours, it made about 11,000 net. Or was it 10,000 net? 10 or 11,000 net. And so that is like, and I'd never experienced that before. It's such a, so what's that, £5,500 per hour? I'd never had that kind of rate of income before. But I get excited thinking it's not about the money, but it's about the generation of income and abundance that I can then use. So what do I use it for? So one of the things I've done is I've created a whole social media network. I built it, I invested money in it, quite a few thousand in it. And now it's a free network. People come, Starseeds come, and they post in it and they meet people. We run free entrepreneur networking meetings every month. There's one tonight, actually, and they're free. We've got about 250 people signed up for it. So these are things we can do, and I love doing it. And so it's not, I don't come to my desk thinking, oh God, another day or a Monday morning. I feel, hey, it's exciting. So abundance to me is just fuel for the journey. But the thing is, what is the journey? Where do you want to go? What do you want to create? What do you want to do? I mean, I'd love to write another book. I've got another book in mind. So I can invest money, you know, a little bit of money with designers and someone to proofread and all those kind of things. But hey, the thing is, I'll get another book and people can read it. So it's not really about the money. It's about money comes in and then what do you do with it? It's really looking at money like a game. It's a bit like a game of Monopoly. And I kind of think of money like a game. And I think a lot of the super wealthy, abundant people do look at money like it's just a game. And money money keeps you in the game. You play the game. If you lose it all, then you're not in the game anymore. Or you have to find a way of generating it so you come back in the game. So I'm enjoying the game of being self-employed, being a spiritual entrepreneur, and also helping others get going in their business and their, you know, doing well. Because I think a lot of starseeds want to work for themselves. They don't want to work for a boss. They want their own. It's the sense of freedom, the sense of expression, the sense of creating anything you want to create and making a difference, making an impact on people. Which, if you're working in an office, it's a bit harder to do. You know, paper shuffling or making widgets. You know. Maybe you're making some difference, but you're not really. At the end of your life, you're not going to go, I'm glad I made all those widgets, or I'm glad I shuffled all that paper, or I'm glad I made that bank all that money. No, you're not going to care about that. What I'm caring about is, so I've written 6 books. All my grandkids have got these books in a drawer somewhere. The parents have kind of wrapped them up. And one day they're going to get to be 20s and they're going to unwrap those books and go, Granddad, interesting. What a crazy, weird, interesting, or whatever they think. But at least they'll have an idea about who I am. I've got very little idea about the inside workings of my grandparents. I don't know. I know some of the things, but I don't know really about their life story. And so I wanted my kids to know about all the stuff I'm into and a bit about my life, you know, and they'll know that. Hopefully they won't be too shocked.
Oh, no, they'll be amazed. And there's many things there. First of all, listening to you speak is like, there are keys then in what you were sharing, because you were sharing your sole impetus in the creations that you're there to create is the joy of it. You get an idea and you're inspired, and it's a joyous experience to create it. So you weren't thinking, like you were saying, how can I make money? It's about, oh yes, this is really exciting, and it's there to serve and assist others, and there's even more joy in that, to think about that and how that's going to be received. So it's just a light key, in a sense, to show the different way that you work when you come from a different frequency or another level of awareness and consciousness, because it's the goal is different to what the goal was in the other frequency that's denser. And also again, going back to your grandchildren who are going to be amazed when they look at these books in the future, is also speaking about, as humans, how we feel we are limited because we are in these deep programs of limitation. We aren't capable of doing this and that and the other. So if maybe Steve had looked at what he was going to be creating in the future, he would not have believed the immensity and the amount of resources that you've accomplished to create. But because you're a multi-dimensional being, tapping into all those frequencies now and going in the flow of just working in the flow of your universe, when the ideas come, you go with it, no resistance, really enjoying it. It's like, look at what you have created, and it's immense and it's infinite. And then, so that's like totally breaking down the humanoid programming of, oh, it's not possible to do that and it's really limited.
Yeah, oh, for sure. So with the idea of money, most people in the 3D world want to get rich, because when they get rich, they'll be happy. This is the idea.
Yeah.
But actually, like, I had a client, she's a high-flying CEO of some company. And I said, well, what is it you're after? And she said, I want to make $1 million this year. And I'm like, that's such a boring goal, really. You know, I didn't say that. I'm like, that is a boring, it is a boring goal, isn't it? Who cares, really? But anyway, so I said to her, well, if you do make $1 million, what will you do with it? And she was like, oh, now most people don't think so much about that, do they? They're like, oh, what will I do with it? And it's like, well, what's the point of the journey is what's beyond that money? What are you trying to get to? Because actually a lot of people think they need $1 million to get somewhere, but actually that $1 million may take you off course. You know, it may take you completely off course. You might buy a super yacht and go and not be on your soul's journey. For some people, and I think this is why I was born into a poor family, some people experiencing that kind of lack or scarcity is the best thing for them to learn, to know or to appreciate. Most people don't appreciate money. They just go, give me the money, you know, I want money. But do they appreciate it? Do they value it? Not really. You really need, I was shocked when I went to a workshop once and I realized I don't value money. I value my spiritual journey. I don't care about money. And so I thought, what, shouldn't I start caring a little bit about money? So I went out and bought a very expensive, do you know Osprey? It's a shop, expensive shop in the West End. So I went there, I bought a wallet, I bought a coin thing, I bought a card thing, I bought a man bag. Actually, I've got 3 man bags from Osprey. I do like Osprey. One small, one big, and one massive, you know. So, and I thought these are containers for money and cards and everything. And it's not like it's a fashion statement. It's more like I am telling the message, I'm valuing you, and I do value what you're providing for me. I value what money can do in the world. I do value it, you know, and I also appreciate there are times when money is not the right thing. You don't need money to do, you know. When I resigned from my second job, I had hardly any money for about a year. I was living, I think, on benefits for a year, had nothing. I was given so many gifts. I was given a retreat in Wales, actually, in South Wales, Glamorgan, beautiful retreat. I was given, I went on holiday to Turkey. I don't know how I did it. I'm like, how did I do all these things when I had hardly any money? I don't know, but somehow the universe opened doors. So it wasn't that money was needed. And so I needed to see, actually, I felt very light having hardly any money. I felt the lightest I felt in a long time. So I realized all the weight of money, I needed to take the weight off of money. You know, it was me, my thinking that money is heavy. I've got to be rich. I've got to make money. I've got to, if I don't make money, what kind of guy am I? You know, what kind of provider am I? What kind of father? I had to take all of that off to feel light. So actually, it was a really good period. I gave all of my benefit money to my children, actually. So I wasn't really, I don't even know what I lived on. You know, somehow I survived anyway. And it was an interesting experiment to find out, actually, you know, in the Native American cultures, they say there's a giveaway, an idea of giving away everything once a year. You give it all away, you create a vacuum, and then you really understand the nature of bores of vacuum because things start coming back in. So I love crystals. I know you like crystals too, Lois. And now I am just surrounded by crystals everywhere. They're all around me. I've given away so many crystals and they come back. I've given away so many books, they come back. I've given away so many training courses in my lifetime, and I've been given so many free training courses. You know, what goes around comes around. So that's the idea of tithing, I think, the original idea of tithing. But it's really about, the idea is not giving 10% to your church. It's about giving and not saying, well, I'm giving you this beautiful gift. Are you going to give me back something now? It's not, that is not the idea. It's I'm going to give you something with no strings and then open, and it will come back from somewhere. This is what I find. And so these transmissions I give for free. I just give them. And then I just open and, you know, it all flows back in, you know. It's just the way the universe works. What you send out comes back. As you give, so you shall receive. So I'm happy to give, you know, help people on abundance, help people on their journey of entrepreneurship. The more I'm helping people, all this, it all comes back. You know, Spirit's going, okay, guys, we're helping you to help them, to help you, to help them. It's all that kind of virtuous cycle, really.
That's wonderful. And before we close, going to see your future ideas potentially and creations, things that you're excited about and the frequencies that you're playing in, I just wanted to hover a little bit around the past global experience we've all been through and in now, coming out of, however we want to perceive it, and ask you I mean, with higher sight now, feeling sort of being able to look back at the immensity of it in a way, what you have gained from this huge global experience?
Well, it did shake me up a bit.
Yeah.
I can't say it didn't, because I'm like, I kind of thought Ascension would continue in a kind of the way it's been continuing. I didn't realize that something quite like that was going to happen. But now when I look back on it, it's bound to, because the more light you bring on the planet, the more systems are shaking and more it's going to create revolution in various ways. But the global situation we've been through was, to me, orchestrated in response to the light that's coming in. The more light that's coming in, there are forces on the world that don't like it. And to me, when I look at this global situation, it's clearly being orchestrated, the way it was sent out, the way the media have ramped it up, the way governments have reacted to it. The whole thing is like strange, but really a lot of people, even I think, are waking up in this. They're looking at the governments, just like the banking system. When I was in the banking system, I used to trust banks. Now I look at the banking system and I don't quite trust that the banking system is operating completely in the light, let's say. And with this global situation, people are looking at it and probably realizing, oh my goodness, the governments I thought were working in my interest, they may not be. They may be working for some other agenda, which I do think they are. And even those agendas are pretty open in saying this is the agenda. If you listen to the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab and all of those characters, they are saying really clearly what their agenda is and really clearly what they're up to. And but the majority of the population are not even listening. They're not even aware of it. And they would say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist." But I'm like, no. Listen to the speech of these guys, and they're telling you, or read the book, and they're saying the Great Reset. This is what they're designing. But the idea is that the dark forces in what they're doing are actually serving the awakening as well, because they are trying to create something else. But actually, it's not going to work. It's not working out. I think what they have done and what they are going to do is, or they probably have done already, is they've created another timeline. So there's the Ascension Timeline where a lot of starseeds are going on. And there's these other timelines which are more 3D, which people will go down and explore if they want to. At least one or two of those timelines are very dark and tyrannical. AI, world domination, one world banking system, one world government. This is the agenda. And that will be achieved on one or two of these timelines. People need to experience that, who want to experience that. Starseeds are not going to experience that. We're not here for that. So there's a splitting of the waves. And so what I'm feeling now is this more and more splitting of the waves where people are, it's almost like I'm moving in the world, but I'm not really in the 3D world so much anymore. It's really strange if I encounter people with 3D conversations. It's like I'm in the 5D world almost constantly, I mean, my family are pretty 3D, but because there's a strong energy of love there, it's okay and I can tolerate it. There's that energy of love there. But I'm not talking with them about awakening. I can talk with my son about Star Wars and that kind of thing, which is where we share. My daughter likes psychics, so we can talk a little bit about that. And my brother's a psychic, actually. He's a medium. And so there is kind of areas where we can cross over. But basically the timelines are splitting, the dimensions are splitting. And at a certain point, I don't know how, but it's going to be where the timelines completely separate. People talk about the solar flash. I don't know exactly how it's going to completely split, but there will be a point where we'll be on a completely 5D timeline, 5D world. I'm pretty sure there will be some Earth changes. We've had these experiences already. There will be major shakeups to systems. Maybe even a number of people will leave the planet. I don't know. It's possible. All these things are unknown, really. And I haven't looked too deeply into it because I don't really want to know how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I know is this planet's heading to 5D, and a lot of souls on this planet are not interested in that, and they'll go and explore another timeline. When they leave the planet, they'll go somewhere else.
And speak about your reality, your universe now, the frequencies that you're playing in, what you're experiencing and seeing.
So every day, every morning and every evening, we do a grounding, connecting, meditation, me and my partner. I go out and I regularly have time in there's a beautiful hotel by the seafront. I just sit there and it's kind of an abundant place. I just sit there and just sit and see if any ideas want to download and go, okay, yeah. because we have to allow space for new things. There's about 5 or 6 transmissions I've just written notes on that I have not had time to do. There's another book that I'm rewriting one of my old books. The publisher asked me, that's coming out next year. There's another book on starseeds I want to write. It's just like I've got all these ideas and projects, like, but can I clone myself and then I'll be able to do them? But otherwise, it's just the time and space of doing it and getting it out there. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty productive, but I wish there were 3 of me. I could be so much more productive. There's, you know, this morning there was another download, another transmission. I'm like, you know, I haven't made any notes on them. I'm like, when am I going to get time to do that? You know, it's really, time is something I need to expand, really.
Oh, Steve, you've been such a joy. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your sharings. It's been really, really wonderful to be able to connect with you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lois. Thank you very much. Nice chatting.